Why would you be able to stream YouTube and can't stream Facebook?
I don't know, but I think we're live now.
Welcome, everybody. Well, this is the old guy, and this is the millennial over here, Mr. Dan
Why would you
Hinden.
be able to stream YouTube and can't stream Facebook?
Wait, why am I
I don't know,
here?
but I think we're live now.
Wait.
You've
All
created an infinity loop.
Now, why am I?
You got to turn it down.
I did. I muted it.
You're being coached by the
I'm
millennial.
I'm old. I can't help it. You have to help me. I'm trying to figure out. There we go. Now we're on. Uh-oh, let me mute this one too. Now I'm going to share to Facebook. All right, you with me?
I'm with you.
All right, let's do this. So how's everybody doing? I got a young man with me today. I just wanted to jump on here and have a little discussion with him and let you guys come in and maybe get a glimpse at a beautiful granddaughter and a son who's out in Las Vegas, Nevada, the town that never sleeps, but it does shut down.
It does shut down. It's very
How's it
sleepy
going
right now.
The pictures you sent me were kind of eerie. Kind of looked like a ghost town. I'm hard to believe that they would shut Vegas down.
Yeah, it's where I live. I live downtown in Las Vegas, in Old Vegas, where it all started. And yeah, they've got everything boarded up and shut down. Fremont Street shut down. It's pretty strange. It's took a bunch of pictures and posted them a little bit ago, but seeing it, you know, how it was all full of life, people having a good time, and now no one. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Who'd have thunk it? I don't think any of us really saw this coming. In no way, no how.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Here we are.
What's the virus doing there? I mean, are you guys high on the list, low on the list, medium on the list?
I don't think I mean, we're not, Nevada isn't very big. So it's not it's like Las Vegas and Reno. So there's not much in the middle there. And so we're not a hugely populated state. And we haven't had a ton of cases, which was pretty surprising with how many visitors we have come from all over the world. But we really didn't, we haven't had, comparatively speaking to some other larger cities, we haven't had that huge of an outbreak.
So how shut down is it? There's nothing open, no casinos, no hotels are open, nothing.
I can't speak on hotels in the sense of like non-casino ones. There might be some open, but all the casino hotels are shut down, boarded up. Yeah, there was a video I saw on Facebook the other day where a family of ducks were going down Las Vegas Boulevard, like mama duck, and then a bunch of little ducklings behind her just going down Las Vegas Boulevard, and nobody was, you know, because nobody's going down it, nobody's driving down it, so the ducks are taking over.
When I was there last time, there was quite a large homeless population living under the bridge. What did they do with all those people? They didn't leave them out there, did they?
So Las Vegas put into law a couple of months ago. They put into law that it was illegal to be out on the street and living on the street if there were beds in some of our the name of them is what are they called?
Homeless
homes?
shelter?
Homeless shelter. Yeah, I don't know why that escaped me. But they passed a law where they made it illegal to be on the streets if there were beds in the homeless shelter, and they just did that recently and a couple months ago. So I haven't seen a lot of homeless people. Hopefully, they found a safe and comfortable environment during this time. Because I've seen some things that they set up some parking lots and stuff with beds and spaces, and but hopefully that they've found a place that's safe, that's off the streets. Because I mean, if without people on the streets, there's no money on the streets, and with no money on the streets, they can't buy food, they can't do whatever they need to do. So hopefully they found somewhere safe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be tough. I mean, it's tough anyway, but especially now.
Yeah.
So, how are the churches? Tell us a little bit about what church life looks like in Vegas during this crisis.
One of the great things that I've seen a lot of churches get involved in during this time is just a couple of different programs around the city that are feeding people. So we've been pouring into that, and a bunch of other churches have, and we've been feeding thousands of people. So we're hopefully with the city pulling together. The city is not foreign to tragedy with what happened October 1st, about 3 years ago, in the shooting here. And the city really came together when that happened. There were at all the blood donation places around the city, they were lined up around the block. They were turning people away during that time. And the city is really coming together right now with the churches. When this first happened and the casinos were shutting down, all the casinos took all their food, all their perishable food, and they gave it out to people. They put stuff on social media and said, "Hey, we're putting boxes together and we're going to give food away till we don't have anymore." And so they've been doing some. The city's really come together, and hopefully that spirit continues as this gets a little deeper and deeper into this. And we'll see.
Yeah. How are the churches functioning in the midst of all this? We have, most everybody became a tele-evangelist overnight. Some are doing parking lot services, to adhere to the social distancing, and the mayor's okay with that here, unlike in some cities where I see they're arresting people.
Yeah.
I thought we lived in America. I'm really
America.
I thought somewhere we had rights, but I guess that all went by the wayside in the light of a virus. That those inalienable rights had an exception clause. But
Yeah.
anyway, what's Vegas churches doing? What are they looking like? And maybe talk about your church.
So we had a online ministry before, where we streamed online on Sunday mornings, Saturday nights, and Sunday mornings. So we were positioned pretty well or ready for that. A lot of churches have had to figure this thing out as they've gone, because not everybody has been at the forefront of the streaming tech for quite a while. And so a lot of people have been having to play catch up, and it's amazing to see the people that are reaching their communities. But I think what this has really shown is that there's a glaring issue with how we we've done online. It was always kind of a secondary thought process. Online was always secondary. It was, hey, this is the live experience. We do everything for the live experience, and then the online experience is just a representation of that. And it doesn't necessarily translate because it's just worship and a message. But I think what we've missed in that online portion of things is engagement. And now engagement and how we engage our community is become the most important thing, because we are having to connect with people and to engage people while not being with them. And we've seen for a long time, for years and years and years, this new thing with online streaming for gamers, for YouTubers, and they've done a wonderful job at creating community. And we're going to have to figure out how to create community like they've created community within their own little genre. And we're going to have to figure out how to do that, and then also how to do outreach without just being another drop in the bucket. And we have to do it very quickly. So it's brought up a lot of interesting questions. It's brought up a lot of interesting discussions. I think it's brought some things, some challenges that we never thought we'd have to navigate. But it's also, I think, going to allow us to pioneer a whole new area that we, necessarily as a church, as a global church. When I say we, I'm talking the global church. What we as a global church just haven't really done well, and we're going to have to figure out how to do that well, and we're going to have to figure out how to reach people and connect with people and make people feeling and get people engaged. And it's shown some holes, but I think we're everybody is figuring it out week by week. And hopefully, we get this down well.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my questions is, like, once this does settle down and is passed, how many people will have come to the realization, I don't need to go to that building, or that particular property, because they have found what everybody's calling a new normal, which is kind of scary to me, this new normal mentality, because we're in a crisis and we're trying to, so like when you're in a crisis, the idea is to make do with the best that you have and learn what was working and what wasn't working. So when we do get the opportunity to have our public gatherings, to shore up the areas that we really were weak in. I think we were weak, you use the word engagement. So it's really difficult, because it's one thing to get 10,000 clicks or likes or people who stop by, but if you look at the analytics and the average is like 2.3 seconds, that's not engagement, and but isn't that the same challenge we have on a brick and mortar policy, where we have people who come, but are we engaging them, or they just pop in, pop out? And that's what I think we're going to learn a lot about our churches. And I think it's exposed some vulnerabilities and weaknesses that we really need to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, there's an analytic called retention rate, and retention rate is basically how long you are retaining someone as a viewer. And if you look at the analytics and you look at retention rate on something like Facebook, it can be extremely disheartening. But I think it brings into question also, like, when people actually walk in the building of a church, how long are we truly retaining their attention? And not that we're there to entertain them or to do any of that, but are we talking about the right things that people actually need to hear about, their personal struggles? Are we are we tackling and navigating the things people are really going through in life? And if we're not, are we retaining their attention in a church building? If we're not doing it with our online streaming, are we retaining their attention via the stream? And you know, this is a part of what we I think never thought about, but or maybe, you know, glancingly thought about, but never put the full thought process and steps through of how do we address the things that people are really struggling with, and are we answering the questions that people are asking? Are we just talking to people? Are we just preaching at people? Are we, you know, are we just, do we have just good messages for a Christian but don't reach the heart of a lost person? You know, so these are some of the questions that I think are coming up now that we have to seriously look at. And you know, it's a good, if people haven't been, if churches haven't been doing it now, then it's time to look at that and to truly assess that.
Yeah, I think, and I think for you millennials and the Gen Zers, for that matter, will have you know, because of the technology, there's so much opportunity and so many ways to get the message out. And I think perhaps this could be a part of the opportunity in this, because I think the church, in by all measurements, you know, by Pew Research, by um, you know, Tom Rayner, all the experts who study church growth, put the church in a decline. And I know some people will say, no, not my church. My church has grown, but when you really analyze the growth, a lot of the growth of the church of the last couple of decades has been transfer growth, where people just move from this church to that church, and there hasn't been a real harvest. You know, I know I'm old school. I came out of, you know, what was like one of the greatest evangelistic moves of God in
Jesus
church
movement.
history was the Jesus movement, where, I mean, tens of thousands of us came to Jesus. You could just like read out of the phone book and people would get saved. There was just like there was a hunger. Hippies, barefoot hippies, pot smoking, love hippies just were getting saved. They were coming to churches barefoot, sitting on the floors, and there was a real revival. It shook the church and challenged the church, and just like the church is always being in the throes of, you know, new wineskin versus old wineskin, new wine versus old wine, and all of that. But what I'm saying is, I think the church, millennials, and especially, this is where I think God needs to redirect our attention, is to the harvest, you know, to the harvest that's in front of us. And are we effectively stewarding the harvest? And because just maintaining your church, or just transferring among the churches, is not a sign of a healthy, life-giving body. You know what I'm saying? I think I think that's part of the issue here, is that I think the Lord is telling us to recalibrate back to the harvest, which means the church has got to get a whole new heart for the harvest, because I think we weren't really thinking much about the harvest. We were thinking more about, you know, taking care of our group, and there's nothing wrong with that, but churches are fundamentally here to preach the gospel and draw in and go after this harvest. You know what I'm saying? And I think this is a challenge that we're in right now, because so while we're out of our buildings for the weekend, this quite possibly, in the way I'm looking at it, could be like the greatest harvest on a Easter Sunday that we have ever known, because there will be people who will be tuning in to to a myriad of opportunities who wouldn't even darken the door of a church anyway.
Oh
But
yeah.
because of the virus, because of conditions, because of presence of people online, that millions of people are going to be exposed to the gospel. And I feel like we just need to go for it. We really need to go for that harvest and really ask God at Matthew 9, ask the Lord of the harvest, send forth laborers, ekbalo, thrust out laborers, because truly the harvest is ripe and it's ready and the laborers are few. So, that's my take on it.
Yeah,
And,
with every challenge creates a wonderful opportunity. This is the way we have to look at it. I think as believers, as faith-filled people, we have to look at it as this is an opportunity to find a new wineskin for what we're trying to do. And I think because we don't necessarily resources are limited, we're not able to necessarily throw money at a problem. I believe that within limitation, within confines, you can come up with your most, when you don't have the ability to necessarily throw money at something, but you have to creatively think how to solve a problem through scarcity, or not scarcity, but limitation. I believe it creates some of the greatest creative ideas that we can possibly have. And I think we have a great opportunity now. We have a great opportunity, and it's all about how we frame this, how we look at this, and we can look at it as a problem that we'll never come back from, or we can look at this as, hey, this is a new opportunity. This is a new way to do something. This is a new way to reach people. This is a new way to reach a generation that says possibly that, according to research, that is falling by the wayside. This is a new opportunity to reach them. And I think if you look at it, if you go week by week, personally, most people have a few connections weekly, but now we are so, we need social media to connect with people now, because we're not really, we're not seeing people. Most people on Facebook or Instagram or whatever have hundreds of friends. And the sharing of a church stream, just imagine if somebody dying looking for hope that has nothing else to look to just happens to click on a stream of a church, that they would have never walked into that building, but they're going to click on a stream because, you know what, maybe this is it. Maybe they're hopeless, and they click on that stream, and they have the ability to hear the gospel for the first time, or they're able to hear it in a way that they've never heard it before, and God grips their heart, So I think this is a wonderful opportunity, and as believers, we can look at through the eyes of faith that says, that God is bigger than this, that He has a plan, that He's got things figured out. We may not see it, we may not know it, we may not know what it looks like, but He has the ability to bring hope and light in the darkest situations. And we're in a pretty dark situation, but there's hope. I think there's a wonderful hope.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's really incumbent on churches right now to reevaluate a lot of our programs and systems, because I think they were ineffective, unfruitful. But it's one of those things, well, this is the way we've done it, and we just keep doing it, because in church circles, it's really hard to, I don't know why it is. I mean, I've been around 40 years. I don't know why it's easier to start something than it is to end something, because we don't like stopping anything.
Sometimes you need to take a program out back and shoot it for the good of it.
Yeah, there's some things that need, I heard a fella that I loved years ago, and this is because this was always my approach. I was never been afraid to try new things, but the challenge is letting go of the old things. It's not trying the new. So what happens is your plate's only this big. So eventually, if you start putting more and more stuff, you gotta let some things go. And
Yeah.
really what we need to do is let go of the things that God's hand has obviously not been on, and had not been on for years. And so, but
Maybe
this
it was on
person
their
said,
first season, and
yeah,
it was
oh,
probably on their
definitely.
first season, but it's sometimes you gotta let go of something.
It's the proverbial cloud. When the cloud moves, you got to move with it. And if you park or camp and the cloud moves, you miss. If you move ahead of the cloud, you miss. And so it's really important we seek the heart of the Lord, and we do ask the Lord for I want a heart for this harvest. I don't want to just be a keeper of the aquarium. I want to be a fisher of men. Teach me, Lord, how to affect. And some of the ways we reached people back in the day have just got to change, because this is a new day. And so that's why, it's in this model of whatever we're going to do, we have to go after what is God's hand on, find it and do it. And this minister told me, he said it's like a horse. The church is great at riding a dead horse. And he said at least have the decency to take it out back and bury it, because it's just disrespectful to keep riding a dead horse. And I think that's part of this challenge in front of us. I'm 64 years old. This whole technological
You're a young
thing,
man.
this technology is intimidating. It's you guys are, it's just you're normal. I'm like coming late into this game, and yet I realized we're not going to reach this harvest unless we take advantage of these platforms. Why wouldn't you be on Facebook when it's a free platform that will reach all around the world? And you don't have to just, I know it's a swamp. It can be a swamp, but you can be a oasis in the middle of a swamp if you pray and ask God, what can we do, and do something unique or something different, or just do something that people will say, hey, that's interesting, because swamps are alive, but in that sense, they're really not going anywhere. And the church is supposed to be like a river that's alive, vibrant, and flowing. And yet most churches are stuck in a swamp and haven't moved in years. And so this whole thing has launched a lot of pastors and a lot of churches into new areas, stretched us, challenged us. And we've seen, hey, we need to get up and get moving with this,
Get out of the
because
muck.
it's going on with or without us. So
I see a bunch of questions popping up in the comments section, and keep them coming, everybody. We'll get to those. I figure we'll take some time at the end or throughout this if you want to ask some questions about it. But about that, what you're saying is are we answering the questions that people are asking? Is the church, I don't think the church has we may not have all the answers. We have the answer, but which is Jesus, but we may not have every answer. There is some mystery, and there is some things that are part of life that, this side of heaven, we probably may never have. But I think there's a generation of people, and there has been a generation of people, millennials, boomers, Gen Xers, Gen Zers, they all have questions. And the question is that the church needs to answer is are we asking or are we answering the questions to the generation that is out there, or are we just keeping status quo? Are we doing what we got to do to make sure that the doors stay open, or are we answering the questions that people that are really at the heart of the generation of people that are hopeless? That, if you look at statistics with young people, especially Gen Z, depression and suicide is through the roof. So obviously we're not reaching them and or answering the questions that give them hope to fight through, to make it through. And I think we really have to search our heart. We have to look at God's heart on this, and we have to find out, what's the answer to this question? What's the answers to the question that they're asking? And how do we give them hope? How do we give them some life in all this?
Yeah, I think, well, that's exactly. Don't you think we are famous for asking the questions that nobody really is even interested in the, I mean, and a lot of, so like, I hear, and I've, this whole coronavirus, look at how believers will attack this from a lot of ways that nobody's really interested in. And we ask questions like, why is this? So is God judging us? Is this the in the mark of the beast is next? And we ask questions like that. And instead of asking questions like, God, what are you trying to say to us? What are you trying to get to me here? What am I not seeing in all this that I need to grab a hold of? Because we're famous for going places that nobody really, because when you start going all off on tangents and rants and all of that, that's not attractive to people. And when you start telling people theories and things that aren't relevant or are not even practical, I just think we lose the crowd. Jesus, he went and sat with the people, and because somebody asked the question on here, what do we think about the term seeker friendly? Well, I know that question, and I know I know the implication of it as it pertains to churches, because
We've had this discussion before.
Yeah. So, and I've wrestled with this question, but see, I look at, here's the thing. Shouldn't we reflect I don't think Jesus was seeker hateful, and,
Yeah.
but the church takes a certain amount of pride in sometimes in like, well, I told them, I gave them a piece of my mind and I let them know what for. And then we get proud, and that's that pharisaical thing, that we held our ground and we won an argument. But here's the problem I have with that. What good does it do you to win an argument, but you lose the person? You lose them. Jesus didn't come to win an argument. He came to win people.
Yeah.
And so we have to have that heart about it, and a lot of times too, we don't need to tell somebody the obvious, like, you're going to hell. What we need to do is love them until they see Jesus in us, and they become thirsty and hungry for the expression of Jesus they see demonstrated through us, instead of just some sermonizing, pontificating, self-promoting gospel that says, yep, I want another one. I don't know.
Well, that was one of the most disheartening things that happened with Kanye West. With Kanye West, I saw so many Christians and believers kind of, looking at it with such a skeptical eye. And they were saying, we'll see. Of course we'll see. Time always reveals, time always tells. But I think if we're on the opposite side of what the angels are doing, I think that's a bad take. If angels celebrate when one believer comes back to God, comes back to Jesus, comes to Jesus, well, and we're saying we'll see, and angels are celebrating, I think that's a bad look for Christians. Because the world is looking at this, the world is seeing this. The world sees your social media posts. The unbeliever, they may not comment, they might not like it, they might not do anything besides scroll past it, but they see our judgmental attitude of people, especially people like Kanye West, and these high profile people, they see our judgment of them, and why would someone ever make themselves susceptible to that? If I, if I'm on the outside looking in and I see what people are saying, why would I want to be a part of that? Why would I want to be subject to the scrutiny of Christians when I could just continue to live my life however I was living it? And it doesn't, it's not a good look. It's not a good, it's not it's not great for us. And loving the disenfranchised, the forgotten, the broken, those people, the known, the unknown, everyone has the we have to reach everyone. We don't have to reach just one group of people. We have to reach the rich and the famous. We have to reach the poor and the disenfranchised, the homeless and the widow and the, we have to reach these people, and being skeptical about their salvation, being skeptical about what their belief, their all those types of things. Will time tell? Yes. But do we have to be so negative and so bad at accepting these people in as into the faith? I think it just is a bad look for us.
Yeah, I took up for Kanye, and a lot of posts that people were coming against him, and because I felt like this too, they were holding his past against him, because yeah, he's got a checkered past. Who doesn't? Same with Justin Bieber. Justin was a young man on a journey and kind of got lost, and but then he came around. And let me tell you something, Justin Bieber is going to reach people I would never be able to reach. Kanye's reaching people I would never be able to reach. And what I saw because I checked it out, I'm like, I want to see what they're doing. It was Christ centric. It was Christ honoring. It was not Kanye. I mean, Kanye very rarely took the mic, even from what I could see. Now, I don't see all of them, but it seemed to me like it was self-promoting and all of that. But even in that, why would I hold his past against him? Because I wouldn't want anybody to hold my past against me, because I have a checkered past too. I have a prodigal journey in my past. I wouldn't want somebody to judge me today from my prodigal journey back then, because that would certainly paint me into a corner, because my prodigal journey was a prodigal journey. And so, but isn't the church here to take prodigals and bring them back into the family and love them and pray for them and encourage them, and even if he did mess up, which I don't know that he did, but shouldn't our hearts be that come on, Kanye, let's get up, let's keep going.
We all ended up, I think a lot of us ended up looking like the brother in the house. I didn't leave, I was here. Why aren't you treating me this way? I think we all ended up looking like the other brother. And I think we forgot about how gracious and the loving kindness of our God, who, as we're running to him, ran towards us. He didn't pull away or shy away. He ran toward us. And I've got my own past. I've got my own junk. I've got my own things that I've done. You got to be in a front row seat for a lot of that. And so I think we've all got our stuff, and to take a holier than thou outlook of everything, or a we'll see approach. Of course we'll see. Time will tell. But let's cheer. Let's have some. Let's cheer when other people. Let's celebrate when people are celebrating. Let's have some celebration, and also have some empathy for where they're at and where they're going, what they're going through.
and again, it comes back to having a heart for the harvest, really having a heart to see the wayward. Jesus looked out over a mass of people, and in that very chapter of Matthew 9, where he talks about the harvest and the pray for the laborers. And here's how it begins. It says, Jesus looked out over and he saw them as sheep having no shepherd, and that they were lost and confused. And that moved him with great compassion to see his people lost and without direction, and I don't know that moves us like it really should. And that's why I think part of this time, God has really caused me to look at that aspect, that to look outward, not to look in, not to look at, well, I can't wait till we get back in church. In fact, I'll tell you that these last couple of weeks, we have done more in outreaches than we have ever done, touching people that we would have never touched. And this week was amazing. I mean, and I'm not here to toot my horn, because this was a group of people and churches joining together too in our city that we've prayed for years, and actually doing things that reach into the community. The church has left the building, and I think that's really too what God's after. It's great to come and go to a great church and have a great worship experience, and you have a great pastor who preaches a great word. But man, if that's all you do, then you're missing the point, because it's not what happens in that building, it's what happens when you leave that building. That's what church is about. And I think that's part of this realignment that needs and is taking place with the church right now. Because I hear people say, oh, I just can't wait till we get back to church and get things back to normal. And I'm like, please, God, don't let it go back to normal. Let it go forward to take us to where we've never been before. Yes, I love corporate worship, but I want the church to come alive and really get engaged with this harvest like we've never been before. And I think that's the challenge in front of us.
Yeah, and has the church been serving its fundamental purpose of equipping the saints to do the work of the ministry? I think that's the question that we have to evaluate, and it's even more evident now. And I think it's a great time for churches to reevaluate their, how they've done things in the past, their outlook on things. I think it's a great opportunity to do that, to say, hey, were we equipping people to do the work of the ministry? We're great at meeting together and building each other up in faith, and that's one part of it. But are we equipping people to do the work of this ministry, or is the pastor carrying all the weight on his back? Is staff doing all the heavy lifting? And that's a whole nother discussion. But
yeah,
but that's
a good discussion.
It's a great discussion. But yeah, I think that's the question that a lot of pastors and churches are going to have to look into is, hey, are we equipping the saints to do the work of the ministry?
Yeah, and that's really, that is the key. The Lord is impressing the church, I think, to turn our eyes toward the harvest. Therefore, pray to the Lord of the harvest that he would send forth laborers. And I think with that requires a whole new mindset, that we have got to break this thing off the church, where ministry is from a paid staff member or a trained, that every person is called to minister. Every member of the body of Christ is to fulfill its function and its ministry And if we don't put every member in its place fulfilling their ministry, then the church is disabled. There's a disability within that, and I think that's been uncovered in this time too, is that we're seeing, I think we're seeing weaknesses in our whole discipleship aspect. We are great at having church. We're not very adept at making disciples.
Yeah.
And that has to change. Well, I think I appreciate you, son, for taking a little
Let's
time
go through
out.
some of these questions on here. Let's chat with some of the people in the chat. Let's answer
go ahead.
questions. I got time. You got time? I ain't got nowhere to go.
I have dinner engagement at a fancy restaurant, and they just called and said we're closed.
They canceled.
Yeah.
What this person JV, which if I was to take a wild guess, say it's my.
I wonder who that is.
Jennifer. She said, "What are engaging topics you want to discuss but aren't sure is a good idea because of religious people?"
I really, for me as a pastor, I really want to go toward the area of relationships, and especially sex, because it's such a taboo topic, and yet it's the topic where most people are stumbling in and don't know how to walk in purity, nor do they understand the importance of that, because the culture obviously has no regard for purity whatsoever, and that kind of has just crept in the church. And I really, that's a subject though, but here's the problem. We never did that in my generation. Your generation, I've seen some pastors tackle it and do a good job of it. I have never attacked that subject directly, and it's somewhat terrifying.
Well, and the thing with it too is you got to think now that with the invention of this wonderful thing called the internet quite a while ago, and the mobile phone and the laptop and the iPad, we are giving children an unhindered access to everything, anything and everything. And kids are seeing stuff at such a young age now that it's can be scary. And the addiction to pornography and the for boys, girls, men, women, every age group, every religion, every creed, it has affected a large portion of our population have gotten into deep with this stuff and can't find a way out. And I'm old enough to remember in the early 2000s when you had when you had a lot of people writing articles on TV shows talking about how pornography was okay, how it was, it was fine, and all doctors and people all coming around that idea. And over the years, they've been doing research about this, and they found out how it rewires your brain, how it completely rewires your brain, and how you receive and get dopamine and all this type of stuff, serotonin, how it messes with the levels of your body. And I think it's created such a huge problem that most Christians, most churches won't even touch with a 10-foot pole. And I think with what our young people are going through, I've got a friend that's a principal, and he says the things that he sees when they confiscate students' phones, what happens in these schools with sexting and the stuff that's going around. I mean, it's quite an issue, and it's an issue that needs to be tackled. It's an issue that needs to be addressed. It's something that has to be gone after. And you know, it's something that we have to talk about it. Here's the thing: if we won't talk about it, someone else is talking about it.
Yeah, for sure.
And if we don't, Kyle Felke, one of our good friends, you know, we had a conversation about tithing and talking about tithing, and he said this one thing to me. He says, if we don't talk about it, if we don't address it, the enemy will twist it. The enemy will take it and twist it. And you know, if we don't address these things, if we don't talk about these things, the enemy will take it and he will twist it, and he will make sexuality and sex and all these different things. He will pervert it. And when it's a beautiful thing, it's a great thing, babe, isn't it, babe?
Here she is.
There's the product of it right over there eating avocado.
You missed your chance there, Jen. Yeah, you know, as a pastor, a lot of the issues I deal with are in this area. So I end up working with people, you know, on a one-on-one basis. But then I realized the reason I'm having to do so much of it on a one-on-one basis is that the church has failed laying a good foundation for, you know, for scriptural convictions and commitment to carry out the biblical mandates that really were not given to keep you from having fun. They're given to keep you from self-destructing, to keep you from ruining your life and the lives of others. And I can tell you too, I'm not just talking about young people. I'm talking about mature adults who have a hard time maintaining any integrity because they just have not learned the importance of the mastery of their own self. And so, yeah, that's probably one subject I think, you know, that I think, you know, needs to be hit on, and as well. I mean, I think it goes throughout and also to know how to address it from a solidly biblical standpoint without a cutting edge where you're using it as a weapon to beat people with. I think it's just a matter of giving biblical instruction and doing it in a loving way, but that will save people from a lot of this confusion and heartache and stuff like that. And so that's probably one key area. And I think going back to that, there's you know, it's just about the whole, I think it's the whole dealing with the whole attitude that needs to be addressed, you know, in our how we're going to bring our lives together and not compartmentalize. I think part of the reason the church has struggled and lost its power and authority and testimony is we compartmentalize everything, and we keep our church life over here, and then we got our social life over here, which we try not to mix those because there's issues between them, and we got our relationships over here, and you know, and then we got, you know, our careers, and we just kind of compartmentalize it, and what we end up doing is we're like fractured people living out of multiple identities, and it's really confusing the people around us because they don't see any clarity or vision or purpose in the overall wholeness of a life lived for God.
Yeah.
And I think if you address that, you know, that's a tough subject to come at and to wrap your arms around, but but I think it's necessary, especially today, because the culture we're in is, is way out there. And some even believe the church has lost the culture wars altogether. They just say it's too late. It's the world. They went too far, and we'll never get them back. The country will never come back to to sanity and to integrity and all of that. I haven't given up, but we have to do something now because because it's not getting better. And so when are we going to address the cultural aspects? Because I think there's too much, the lines are too blurry between the culture and the church. They're just too blurry. There's got to be a distinction, not a pharisaical distinction, but come ye out from among them and be separate, says the Lord, and then I'll receive you. And we don't go there anymore, because I think of the context that it has been done was highly legalistic and self-righteous and pompous. But the fact that they had it wrong doesn't mean we should ignore it. It means we got to get it right, because the culture is just continually drifting away, and we really need to address the culture. We need to quit being mealy-mouthed about it. We need to be straight up and have clarity about it. And that's, to me, that's so important, because I think if we don't do that, the end result is then there becomes no distinction between the culture and the church, and then we lose our saltiness, and
Yeah.
we're henceforth not much good for anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I got to say about that. That's my Forrest Gump take on it.
Life is like a box of chocolate, and unfortunately, a lot of them are filled with toothpaste.
It's true. It's true. Well, what do you see from your vantage point? What would you like? Where do you think the church is coming behind in, or needs to run and get ahead in, or what do you see? Maybe you see it that it's we're on track. What's your take on it?
I think that I think that in this season, the church is asking, as a whole, is asking themselves a lot of they're having to ask themselves a lot of really great questions, like we talked about before, on how to reach people, and they're finding new ways to do it. I think that in this season and moving forward, thinking about how we engage people, how we answer the questions that people are really, looking to have answered, and not like that we're going to have all the answers, not that we're going to, and I think this is a thing that we've probably done poorly in the past, is we pretend like we may have the answer, which is Jesus. He's the answer to our eternity. He's the answer to an abundant life. But we may not have all the answers of every little thing. And I think the church has taken a stance as they haven't been able to really communicate that well. And we come across as though we have all the answers to every little thing. And I think what Apple does this really well. When you go in there, if one of their employees doesn't have an answer to something, they will say, "Hey, I don't know that, but I'd love to find out with you." And they come alongside of you and they say, "Hey, let's find out together." And I think as believers, we need to take an approach of the things that we don't know in that type of way. Hey, let's find out together, because that creates community, that creates a bond, that creates unity, that creates relationship. And we need to be able to do those types of things and not come from a lofty place of, hey, I have the answers to everything. But we need to come to a place of, hey, you're my brother, you're my friend, you're someone that is searching, you're someone that's seeking. If you're asking a question, it means you're seeking an answer. And we need to be the type of person that can come alongside of somebody and help them find what they're looking for. And obviously the answer to what their soul is seeking for, what the answer to life is and an abundant life is Jesus. But it's also, hey, let's come alongside you. Let's do life together. Let's and not do life together. And I actually hate that term nowadays because it's such a Christianese thing that's become like a, let's do life together. Like, oh, I'll see you on Sunday. Like that's what let's do life together has become, like I have my life over here and this is, doing life. Whatever. That's a whole nother thing. But we need to be brothers. We need to be friends. We need to have real relationship with people. We need to get real with people. We need to take off the mask and the veneer of this perfect life that everyone's living. The thing that I love about Vegas is no one's hiding. There's not much hiding. Sin is openly just done. People are just sinning in public. We're in pagan Rome here. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about Vegas is, we put a veneer on the city. We have these big, beautiful buildings, but there's a lot of darkness going on, but a lot of that darkness isn't really going on in the dark. It's just kind of open. And one of the things that I noticed that was a big switch from going from Portage, Indiana, from the Midwest to Vegas was, it's not that people weren't sinning or people weren't going, doing things, that type of stuff wasn't happening. It's that they just did a much better job of hiding it. And here it's not so. And I think, and I think this is just a thing with Christians in general, because there's not a very large Christian population here. Very strange thing is we have more mega churches per capita than anywhere else in the country, but we have fewer Christians than almost anywhere else in the country. It's very strange. But that's, we need to drop the perfect attitude. We got to drop we have to lower our guard, and we also, when people share stuff with us, we've got to be able to keep that stuff. That doesn't become the hot goss. That doesn't become fodder for a conversation. You know what I heard? We have to be a real friend to people. And I think we've really dropped the ball with that. We've really dropped the ball with people in the sense of we haven't been good friends. We haven't been a good brother or sister to someone. And a lot of the reason why people won't share stuff with us is because they don't think we're trustworthy. And honestly, we probably haven't earned that trustworthiness of most other people. And I think we really need to do a better job of that as believers, as Christians, as people of faith, that we have to be able to protect people. We have to be able to protect people's vulnerability. We have to protect the most vulnerable. We have to protect when people are vulnerable. We have to be trustworthy. We have to be honest with who we are. We're not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. We don't have this figured out. We're still figuring it out. I'm still figuring it out day by day. And I want to be around people that have that same type of attitude. Some of this stuff, we're just figuring it out. We're not perfect yet.
No, it's my favorite. So like my favorite people here at the church are our Kimbrough girls, because they're just so raw and real, and I love that. I don't have to like wonder or do like double speak or I don't have to wade through any Christian BS. With them. They just tell it like it is. And I like that. I think it's time for us to be honest. And it's time for us to be transparent and And it's time for us to really love people. And that means love them at their best. And then especially then love them at their worst, and love covers it. It's not, we're not trying to expose people. We're trying to cover people. We're, and that's probably
That doesn't mean that we compromise either. One of my favorite stories about being out here in Las Vegas was when I think we were doing a love, sex, and dating small group, and we were talking about some of those things. And one of the girls in our group, we had been at the church out here in Vegas for three or 6 months, right, Jen? Something like that. Pretty short time. And we talked about we were talking about sex, and we were talking about how sex is something for marriage and everything like that. And we ended up having a conversation with one of the people in our group like a week later, and she just straight up said, "I didn't know I wasn't supposed to not have sex with my boyfriend." Like, she just didn't. It was nothing, something that wasn't
nobody
talked
ever
about,
told her.
brought up. And we were, we said, yeah, God's outlook on this is it's a beautiful thing that's there for marriage. And we didn't compromise what we believed or what we thought, but we also, we also loved her through that whole process. And we didn't judge her for not knowing or not, or any of those things. But it was an interesting moment when we first came out here and it spoke a lot to kind of where people were at and that lived here in Vegas. A lot of people just, I didn't know that.
No, you'd be surprised how many people, when you really start and get the opportunity to really have a conversation, just how little we take for granted. I guess that everybody's been exposed to the Christianity or theological bedrock foundations. And I had someone tell me yesterday, they were sharing with somebody, and this person was just intrigued as they went on to share the simple truth about Christ and how he came to die for them. And this girl said, "I never knew Jesus came to die for us." She had heard the story, but she didn't put it all together that he came for you. He came to die for your sin. And we're like, wait, isn't this America? This is a Christian nation. No. There's very little about our nation anymore that has a theological foundation in the Gospels. There are multitudes of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in America that have never really truly heard the gospel. They've heard TV evangelists, they've heard some like bits and pieces, but that doesn't mean they may even own a Bible, but they don't know the truth of the gospel and who Jesus is and why he came and what he did. And I used to hear it back in the day, some of my friends that were pretty staunch and older and pastors, and they told me America is gospel hardened. And I said, America isn't gospel hardened, it's gospel ignorant. There's a big difference between being hardened and being ignorant.
Yeah.
And all you have to do for somebody that's ignorant is give them the information. There are people who are who's gospel hardened? The church. Yeah. and it's the person who's never heard or doesn't know, they're just ignorant. And there's a huge difference between being hardened and being ignorant. And there's a lot of people that just don't know. And until we connect with them and you have those conversations like you did with her, and you meet people, the church is so insulated too, because if you're not going out and meeting people, like for us, the Kimbrough girls that we bring in, they get us out of our comfort zone because they've not lived in a cocoon. they come in from a world that's been mean and rough, and they've had to do things just to survive. And now you put them in a, you know, a church setting, and and they're still talking, like they've always talked, and they think with that mind they've been thinking with, and then you just got to love them and lead them along, and then you watch God transform them in the process of sanctification as he pours himself into them. And it's really cool, it's to see then these girls who come in and go, man, I was this and I was doing this, I didn't know, I didn't, I mean,
Do you
and then
think it's
Jesus gets up
easier? Do you think it's easier to do that with somebody in that situation than it is to do that with somebody that's just off the street? Do you think we do a good job of doing something like that with like people like Kimbrough girls? Like we do a good job of loving those people, but we do a bad job of loving the people off the street or the fallen Christian believer or the those types of things.
Well, I think I don't know. I must just speak for my church. My church does an amazing job of loving the marginalized, you know, because so many of my people, look at a lot, even my key leaders are ex-drug addicts and alcoholics and ex, um, just ex uh, convicts. And I mean, you know what I mean? So it gives you a heart for those broken people. And I want that. I've been doing prison jail ministry for like 30 of my 40 years in ministry, which has always kept me tenderized toward those. And tell you the truth, I would rather minister to someone in that position than I would a church hardened person, because I find those people more open, more receptive than I do a person who's been hanging around church, because people who hang around church tend to get bitter, hard, they got church hurt. They got a whole myriad of issues that make it really hard to penetrate through that protective shell they've had to develop,
Yeah.
maybe sometimes too, to protect themselves from being betrayed, or they put their trust in the wrong pastor or the wrong people, but the person who's just coming out of I just got arrested, I'm just out here in Westville and I got 5 years, and pray for me, and I got a letter this week, a great letter from a guy, and he got saved in one of my Monday nights, like, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. And he was there for several years. And now he wrote me, he's home. Everything's going really good. He just wrote to thank me and said, I look forward to those Monday nights, and you'll never know, what those Monday nights meant to me during my time there. And when I I got a job, but I don't have a car yet. And when I get a car, I'm going to come visit you. I mean, I get those letters all the time from people that, that I have had the privilege to reach in those, when they were at their lowest.
Yeah.
And my role was to bring them into their realization of their sonship and their higher purpose and everything. And I find it a lot easier to do that with those guys and these ladies than I do a hardened church world. Because if you've been around the church for any length of time, if you don't get your heart properly positioned, your heart is going to tend to get pretty calloused. And again, is that maybe what the Lord is doing when he sent us all home and grounded us for a few weeks to say, hey, get your heart, it's time for a heart check. It's time for you to check your heart here. Because I really think this is, in my opinion, this is just my opinion. I'm not saying thus saith the Lord and trying to wrap God around it, or make some, wild, proclamation. But I really feel like God has more to say to the church right now than he does to anyone else. And yet the church seems, to really be more like, oh, let's we're more focused on the virus and let's get this behind us, where we should be focused on getting our heart before God and getting realigned, because what's coming after this, I believe, is the greatest harvest that has ever been. But it's going to be a double-bladed harvest for the people whose hearts are right. They're going to see the harvest of wheat. The people whose heart doesn't get right, you're going to see a harvest of tares. Remember, Jesus told the parable there in the last day, there was going to be a harvest. The wheat and tares were going to grow together. And they said, oh, let's go out there. You want us to pull up these tares? He said, no, let them grow together, because you'll destroy the wheat if you pull up the tares. But simultaneously, the church is headed to the greatest harvest that's ever been. I want to be on the right side of this harvest. And I really feel like, we weren't ready for this harvest, but now I think God has our attention. And I pray that we get about the Father's business.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate your time. I don't see any questions on here. I don't know if we just mesmerized them.
Well, we need to get this thing up on Facebook next time. If there is a next time, we need to get it working on Facebook.
Yeah, I'll share it to, I don't know I still don't know why we could get on YouTube and not on Facebook. That to me is this mind. I don't get that, but if I had Alec, another millennial here with me, he would have got this all running and going, because that's my guy right there. I mean, that it used to be that, pastors were the most important people in the church. You know what we found out in all this? It was the techies that are the most important people in the church. Yeah. Well, any last thoughts or words? Bev, glad you got to be with us. Come on home. They're out in Arizona. They spent the whole winter in the nice weather. It's time to come home. The weather's broke, and can't wait to see you. Well, son, any last thoughts or comments or disclaimers?
No, we love you. We miss you guys. Everybody that's going to watch this, everybody that's watching this. If you're from Indiana, we love you guys. We miss you guys. Miss you and Mom. Hopefully,
Yeah.
I know you were
I had plans
here, but we'll hopefully
I had plans.
make it work.
Can you hold up the baby? They want to see the baby. She handy?
She's getting put down for a nap right now.
Oh, well, sorry, Brenda. If they want a glimpse of that, they don't really care about us, Dan. They want to look at the baby.
It's always about the baby. I
will say you have the right hat on there. Go Sox. They were going to win the World Series, but
this was their year.
Since there's going to probably not be a baseball season, is there? I don't know.
Who knows?
But it'll be a 60-game season, right?
It might be.
It wouldn't be baseball if you don't play 160 games. It'll always have an asterisk by it, because it's not how you play baseball.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right, love you, and we'll do this again. I appreciate your time and appreciate everybody for tuning in. We love you guys. We're praying for everybody, praying for you too, Dan and Jen and the little princess, JT. She's a doll. Every day we get videos, man, it just makes my heart melt. I had plans to be out there already, but I had to, we had to cancel a lot of plans. And I didn't get refunds on any airfare. I did get, credits, but no refunds.
No refunds yet.
All right, man. Love you. Bye, everybody.
Love you, Dad.
Catch you later.
We'll talk to you guys.